Hey there, everybody.
Hi.
So we are going to be doing something a little bit different today. We recently took a trip and visited family, and one of the stops we made along the way was in Atlanta, and we stopped at the High Art Museum, very popular museum in Atlanta, and we checked out the Winnie the Pooh exhibit. And it's been running since June, and it ends the first week of September, so time is running out if you still haven't seen it and you'd like to. But it was a very interesting exhibit talking about Milne and E.H. Shepard, who collaborated to put out the Winnie the Pooh books and stories. It showed a lot of how they came up with ideas together, how they mapped out the 100 Acre Wood, a lot of early sketches showing what they initially thought, what ended up being drawn, and it was a really cool exhibit.
Very cool.
And it was a lot of fun. Miss Annette here, the Winnie the Pooh expert and huge fan, was very excited to check this out. And she loves those characters, don't she?
It was very cool to see them. Yeah, there are all kinds of really neat stuff, and the history and the knickknacks and the trees growing up in the middle of the room. Yeah, you're gonna see some really cool stuff.
It was pretty cool. So they didn't really want you to shoot video of the thing. We could take as many pictures as we liked. And it was also, being an art museum stuff, it was pretty quiet. So it wasn't something that we could just sit there and narrate video throughout. So we shot a ton of pictures, and we're just going to sort of describe now what we saw and what you're seeing as we go through the museum. So you'll be able to see a lot of the exhibit in this video here, and then we're just going to sort of tell you a little bit of what we were seeing and what it was like being there, and it was very cool. So without further ado,
here we go.
Let's step inside the Winnie the Pooh exhibit at the High Art Museum this summer in Atlanta.
Stuffed with fluff, he's Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, willy-nilly, silly old bear.
All right, so as we entered the Winnie the Pooh exhibit area, there was a window with some Winnie the Pooh art and objects.
Hello.
And once you got into the entryway, it was really cool. It wasn't super decorated right at the front, but there was a storybook entrance with the words and the opening of the Winnie the Pooh book. There were things hanging from the ceiling. There was Winnie the Pooh images.
Winnie the Pooh dangling from the ceiling with a balloon around him. Was trying to hold him down to the ground. It was fun.
There was a lot of artwork, but what was really cool about the exhibit is they also had a lot of three-dimensional stuff. In the initial entry, you had sketches of the famous bridge in the 100 Acre Wood, and they actually had a little bridge that you could take photos in front of.
You could walk on it.
Yeah, and you could walk across the bridge. They had projections of water next to the bridge.
With little sticks, so you could have your stick race floating in the fake water. It was really cool.
And they had umbrellas dangling upside down from the ceiling. And it was cool. It really gave it a three-dimensional kind of effect in the different rooms.
Which was really good for the kids, and there were a ton of little kids. So it gave them something to look at too.
So once you went upstairs into the main portion of the exhibit, there were a lot of different pieces of art on the wall of the different characters. And they had a lot of original art on the walls that were, of course, very small, much smaller. And then they blew up those pieces of art. They actually had full-size, wall-size sketches of those art, so you could see what it looked like in the finished version and blown up in size.
Yeah, it would have the original artwork with a little story about how it came to pass, and it was the art with a clip from what would have been in the book that was illustrated, and here's what the book says. And yeah, then on the wall in color and just huge. It's so cool.
So it was really, and they had a couple of interactive things for kids to like open boxes and stuff and figure out what's inside, what things have Pooh and the gang been up to. They had these windmill kind of things, these three-dimensional word displays coming from the ceiling that were extended in a couple of different directions that had a three-dimensional effect and told a little bit of story and had sort of the Pooh whimsy. It was really neat.
I like that they had a room off to the side at the very beginning that was like a bedroom, like a kid's bedroom with a little table and chairs and a bed for parents to take the little ones in there and just read them stories to keep them occupied if they weren't into looking at the pictures on the wall. So that was pretty neat.
So you can see here some of these original sketches that were done in the, most of them were in the early to mid-20s, and it was really cool seeing those and then seeing how they ended up appearing in the book, or different changes. Sometimes that you could see that they had sketched the character multiple times on the same page and changed some things and never erased what they started with. So you could see some of the original changes. And there was a lot of interesting little pieces that sort of told stories about how they came to decide on something, what they maybe did initially in trying to discover who the characters were. And it was really interesting.
Shepard's thought processes as he was sketching out the characters and the scenes. It was really neat.
In the middle of one or two of the rooms,
I love those trees.
They had these three-dimensional trees, and they weren't complete all the way around. They were kind of like what you might expect out of the Pooh book. They were sort of partial 2D images, but expanded to 3D. If you peeked your head up inside of them, which was open on one side, you could actually hear the characters talking to each other, and it sounded like they were hiding up in the tree somewhere.
And one of them was the story narration, part of one of the chapters, and songs, so you could hear music in it. It was really, I say it again, it was really neat.
So there was artwork all over the walls. There were the words hanging three-dimensionally from the ceiling. Lots of the little frame sketches with the bigger art behind it. Some interesting stuff that talked about the drawing, the initial drawing of 100 Acre Wood, and how Milne and E.H. Shepard decided where things would be. Everything had an idea of why they thought this should be this particular way. And there was a lot of collaboration. They even had a Winnie the Pooh mailbox there.
They had a lot of stuff for the little kids. So in what I think it was the third room, after the trees, they had a kids area where they sat down and drew pictures and wrote letters to Pooh, and then they could mail their letters. And there were a bunch of kids sitting at the table drawing pictures and putting stuff in the mailbox. It was just a really, really fun way for the kids to experience the museum.
They had a couple of rooms aside from the art that had some of the Pooh memorabilia, and it was everything from some of the older books to some of the plush animals,
toys and games,
board games, some Disney, some not Disney. A couple of rare board games. It was really interesting seeing some of the different things, seeing the different versions of Pooh that have in pop culture over the years, paper dolls and things like that. So it was really interesting and fascinating to see everything that was going on there with Pooh and the history of the books and the characters.
What was really neat was to look at it and say, oh, hey, I had that, or I remember seeing that, or, hey, look over here, I had that, or and listening to other people, older people, grandparents, and they're talking to their grandchildren, I used to have that. some of the stuff was not English, not American. It was, there was some stuff that was from all over the world where Winnie the Pooh has been.
They even had these neat shoes that are not all that unlike the Winnie the Pooh shoes that Miss Annette has.
Yes, I have some bands very similar to those.
So it was a lot of fun checking this exhibit out. We spent a lot of time wandering around and checking out all the individual pieces of art, and it was really, really neat to be able to see this exhibit. Definitely was something that Annette appreciated very much.
Oh my gosh, I loved it. That was the best part of the trip. Absolutely.
It was a nice thing to get. We were kind of planning to go to Atlanta, and to have something like that to go to was a real treat. And we definitely wanted to share some of this stuff with you guys because it's it's really interesting. It's a bit of history, it's a bit of nostalgia, and it was such a great exhibit to see. So we hope you enjoyed the exhibit and taken a little ride with us to check out the Pooh exhibit. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Join us for another journey sometime in the near future. So remember, kids, have a good time all the time.